let's start with our first keynote speaker, who's going to be Bozhidar Batsov. Bozhidar is well known for his contributions to various Ruby, Clojure, or Emacs Lisp open source projects. He's also holding the record for the most watched video from previous hackcons. He's a beloved developer in Bulgaria and a great inspiration to all of us. So please, very big round of applause for Bozhidar Batsov.
Good morning, everyone. So I have just one question before we get started. Are you ready for HackConf? This is Bulgaria, not fucking Sweden. Are you ready? That's more like it. Okay, let's get this party started. So, somebody mentioned that I was entrusted the great honor of being the first keynote speaker. That's always such a big responsibility because it means the organizers have a great faith in my ability not to get drunk on a Friday night. And they sincerely believe that I'm the type of speaker who actually writes their presentations in advance and not on the day of the conference, because this would significantly limit my ability to prepare, right? In my case, this also means that they believe that I can learn English on a rather quick notice, because if I recall correctly, almost all of my talks in Bulgaria so far were in Bulgarian. Because, you know, this is the language of the greatest philosophers that exist, a language that is so expressive, so eloquent. You cannot beat it. Some people can beat it, and some people are totally unbeatable. But yeah, I think that I was doing better than them in Bulgarian. I'm not certain how good will I do in English, but I'll give it my best shot. I'm very, very excited to be here on one hand because this is my third appearance at HackConf. On another hand, so many good things were said about me just now that I'm a little bit worried and quite anxious, to be honest, because it seems that I have quite the shoes to fill, and my shoes today are rather tiny, which is not quite random. Okay, so 5 years ago, I was here, 5 events ago, I was here to speak about the books that every programmer must read. I promised at my talk that I was going to follow it up with a blog post so people can quickly refer to all the books. I still have to write this blog post. I started writing it last night, and I'm not even joking. Next year, I spoke how we can teach ourselves programming in something like 10 plus years. But this talk got the dubious award of being the longest talk in the history of conferences. I remember that Rado told me, do anything you want to do, and I think I did something that was 2.5 hours long. Maybe today I'm going to break my record, despite the 40-minute time box. I just didn't bother to tell Rado and Ivo about this, because I knew that they would probably kill me. So they say that third time is a charm, so we'll see. My name is still Bozhidar, and you are still the only audience in the world who can perfectly read and pronounce this, which is quite convenient for me. I have learned recently that my name has been trending abroad, especially in Ukraine, where people are naming bars and clubs after me. So I'm going up in the world, which is good. I'm still the VP of engineering of TopTal, and you still probably don't care about this at all, so that's okay. I still do a lot of open source work. Radu mentioned some of my projects, so boring. Still the greatest editor in the world. That's not boring. That's very important. One thing that's kind of new is that this year, for the first time, I bothered to produce some swag. So find me after my talk. I have stickers, I have some badges. I think that they're kind of neat. My social handle is still this one, although I just deleted my Instagram profile. And this is the first bit of wisdom from my talk today for you. Delete your Instagram. Afterwards, delete your Facebook as well. Free yourselves from the shackles of society. I still write about Emacs, although not as frequently as before. But last year, exactly on this day, I started a new blog about programming, and I have been rather active there, so you can check it out. And normally, somewhere around here, I would cut my presentation and switch to the actual presentation. But recently, I started to learn some new interesting things about myself that I feel are important to share with you. You probably remember what happened with the National Revenue Agency and the clusterfuck around leaking all of the financial records of all of our compatriots. After this, there was one article saying that the prime suspect, I believe his name was Cristian Dobrev or something like this, was not even on the list of the top 10 Bulgarian white hackers. Whatever this means. Surprisingly for me, I was number 7 on this list. Surprisingly, mostly because, as you can see, I'm not very white. But that's one thing. So this is the article, rather short. I'll highlight some of the important things that I learned about myself from there. First, I learned that my name was spelled rather differently in Bulgarian. Interesting. I also finally learned how do you say Stack Overflow in Bulgarian. That this was definitely challenging and enlightening. I learned that I was an expert in cybersecurity, even though I know absolutely shit about cybersecurity. But still, I'm flattered. I learned that I was an expert in the following programming languages: Unix, Emacs, Perl, and Ruby. And I want to change this really quickly. So how do we do it? You're all young people, or the majority of you, and I'm certain that all of you are going to have great careers. So we should start thinking about our future today. What is the best investment strategy in the world? The investment strategy of Warren Buffett, Jack Bogle, and so on. It's very simple. Give your money to passive investment, low-cost mutual index fund, something that doesn't charge you outrageous fees to go in, go out, manage your profile. It basically is an investment that is split over a broad range of financial instruments. So the risk for you is very little, and you just follow the markets, which typically grow. So this is the growth of the most popular financial index in the world, the Standard & Poor 500, which represents the 500 biggest companies in the United States. As you can see, if you invested $1,000 there in 2009, exactly 10 years ago, you would have something like $3,000 now. Obviously, markets don't just go up, they also go down. But when you look at the statistics for the past 90 years, the average return from the stock markets in the States has been something like 10%, which is significantly better than deposits, even if they're in the corporate trade bank, or however KTB is translated in Bulgarian. So there are smarter ways to ensure your future that are not crazy. You can invest in Bulgaria if you want, but as you can see, our stock market is quite a bit more volatile, and unlike most stock markets in the world, which are going up right now, it's going down, which means that we are a unique nation, nothing bad. So, you know that I love recommending good books. If you have to read just a single book on investment, this book should be the Little Book of Common Sense Investing. It's really brilliant. If you have to read 2, this is the only book that is geared towards investment in Bulgaria, what is available and makes sense for Bulgarians in particular. If you're really lazy, just go to moneyforsomething.com, read everything there for 20 minutes, and fix your life. That's the cheapest service that you can find to invest in from Bulgaria. I'm not affiliated with it in any way. It's also the only one that allows you to trade ETFs basically for free. And then, you know, we party. As the first talk, I think it's going to be way more useful than my second talk, so I hope that everything I taught kind of connected with you. If not, we are going to reconnect on the subject after my talk. Now, for the main event. This is a programming conference, and I feel that we are going to have to talk about programming. The title of my presentation is the Groundhog Development Method, which I believe is going to be something rather new to the majority of you. the first question that you have to be asking yourself right now is, what the fuck is a groundhog? That's a groundhog. It's an angry-looking rodent which became popular in Bulgaria in a certain chocolate commercial as somebody who is wrapping chocolate in folio. To make it more clear, it's a marmot. Okay, Bulgarian marmots have other skills than wrapping chocolate in folio, like unwrapping folio from bottles and emptying those bottles, but that's Bulgaria. I ran my talk by a few people to get their feel on it, and all of them imagined that the talk would be somewhat related to biology. We would be doing gene transformations of groundhogs. We are going to make them more intelligent and replace human programmers with groundhogs eventually. It's not far-fetched, and it is going to happen eventually. But today, we are going to talk about something a little bit different. One of my big heroes, one of my biggest sources of inspiration throughout my entire career as a programmer was Joe Armstrong, one of the co-creators of the Erlang programming language. And Joe was very, very active on Twitter. I'm very active on Twitter as well. And one day Joe posted this tweet which resonated extremely strongly with me. The Groundhog development method. Invent a new simple thing. Add features. Add more features. Add more and more and more and more features. You get to a point where it's so complicated that nobody can use it. You throw everything away. You go back to the beginning. And does this sound like something familiar to all of you? Yes, no, maybe? Okay. I was hoping for more yeses, but I guess this means that my talk is going to be even more meaningful than I imagined. Joe posted this tweet to start a conversation. Can we break this cycle? Can we do better? He never answered what is his take on this, but in my presentation now, I'm going to share a few of my thoughts on the subject. First of all, I made a small mistake with the title of my talk. I meant to name it the Groundhog Day Development Method, not the Groundhog Development Method. But why so? The tweet itself is inspired from a famous movie from 1993, but I believe that probably most of you weren't born when the movie came out. It's about Bill Murray being stuck in a day which keeps repeating and repeating and repeating, and he has to find a way to get out of this cycle. It's a really great movie, much better than recent comedies. If you don't trust me, trust IMDb, because if something has a rating of 8 out of 10, can it be bad? Maybe. So the crux of the movie is that life has a funny way of repeating itself. To craft this expensive custom solution. This expands to something bigger. Many companies become victims of the syndrome not invented here, meaning that they want to control completely their technology stack, all of the blocks in it, all of the subsystems. Let's do custom billing. Let's do custom CMS. Let's do custom invoicing. Let's do custom CRM. Let's do custom ERP. I've seen some really crazy things. I've seen companies build custom HR tools. Where does it end? In one company, we were even proposing to build a custom chat system because Slack supposedly wasn't good enough. That's a very, very dangerous slope, and you have to be very careful if you find yourself walking it. But problems do not appear only in big projects. Another example from my career, something that happened maybe 8 years ago when I was working at a fintech company. One of the small components of our stack, but a crucial component, was a service that is streaming prices in real time, currency pair prices, stock prices, and so on to our mobile clients, to our web clients. Those prices in the jargon of finance are known as quotes. So we had this small quote streamer. It was implemented in Node.js. It had a solid test coverage, pretty small code base. Everything seemed good, except this was constantly crashing and constantly was suffering from some performance issues. The prices would be delayed, causing trades not being able to be executed. We tried to apply some fixes, but all of the attempts failed. Eventually, the engineering team told me that this service was unfixable and we had to rewrite it. So we decided that Node.js was the problem, not us. And back in the day, we thought that Clojure was the best programming language in the world, which still is true, by the way. So we decided, okay, if we replace the problematic Node.js with the best programming language in the world, this is bound to solve all of our problems, right? Okay, we rewrote this library and we rewrote it pretty quickly. But we encountered new problems. For instance, it turned out that one of the core Clojure libraries, named CoreAsync, was super buggy, and the upstream maintainers didn't want to fix the bugs that we encountered. Also, it turned out that not everybody in the company was nearly as excited about Clojure as the people who worked on the translation of the service from Node.js to Clojure. Many thought that Clojure was very weird. They didn't want to be bothered to learn it. And this created much friction within the team. Eventually, after a lot of frustration, a lot of shouting, screaming, and some light fights, Irish style, we decided to rewrite this back in Node.js. The rewritten version had no performance issues and no crashes. So clearly, Node.js wasn't our real problem. On one hand, after this story, I was really depressed because I had scientifically proven that even the best programming language in the world doesn't guarantee the success of your projects. On the other hand, I was really encouraged to learn that everything is fixable, even supposedly unfixable projects. This was also a nice reminder that a tool is only as good as the person using it. If you give somebody a lightsaber, this doesn't make them immediately a Jedi, right? Maybe, maybe not. There is also the important consideration, how do you pick the tools, the languages, the frameworks that you use in your company? You shouldn't be picking them top down. We shouldn't be picking them without a wide debate in the company, because ultimately, if the people who are supposed to use some technology stack are not happy, they don't enjoy it, you are going to regret it. And here we get to some slightly different examples. How do we combat complexity? How do we combat this add more features aspect of the Groundhog Day development method? Selfishly, I'm going to give you an example from one of my personal projects. Rubocop is Ruby lint tool. It basically checks for all sorts of problems in your Ruby applications. It's a pretty big project and a pretty popular one. Each version gets something like 1.5 million downloads. But the complexity of the project has stayed more or less the same since the initial release almost 10 years ago. Why so? Because I had a very aggressive strategy to fight the addition of more complexity. If somebody suggests a good feature that adds a lot of complexity, I just reject it because I don't want to be maintaining this complexity. Features that are not aligned with the core goals of the project immediately get rejected. Okay, it would be nice to add some integration for version control tools in a linter so you can just check the files that you changed, right? But this adds a lot of complexity and it's not going to happen. If somebody suggests supporting an obscure coding style, this gets rejected because we shouldn't bother. If somebody suggests new runtime dependencies to be added, I'm extremely skeptical and probably this is going to be rejected. And I'm a big believer in removing features. Most systems just are adding stuff. If I notice that something is not used, I just delete it. It causes some problem in the short term, but it is what it is. I think that the screen was blinking that I'm out of time, but I think that this is a mistake. So I'll continue speaking. 5 minutes maybe? 10, because we're old friends. Okay. So simplicity is the design choice. That's how I want to close. You have to really work for simplicity. You have to think about simplicity every single day. Most people start thinking about the problems the moment they encounter them, but you should be thinking before you start every day on the job, and you're going to find that you're going to have significantly fewer complexity issues. That's one of my all-time favorite talks by Rich Hickey. I highly recommend to everybody to take a look at it. Other things that are important as the general recipe. Okay, so invent a new simple thing. How do you combat complexity afterwards? You just keep it simple. I told you, you limit external dependencies. You're very cautious with adding new features. You remove the stuff that they don't work out. Okay, people are going to tell you that breaking changes suck, and they kind of do. But in the long run, the maintenance overhead that you are going to encounter is going to suck even more. It's going to make you cry. And that's not good. Don't rewrite anything big unless you've experienced failures at least 20 times in your career and you really understand the implications. Say no to hype-driven development. Don't rewrite a project every year in the latest and greatest technology, because if you're always chasing after the next hot technology, then you're never building anything valuable. Okay, you cannot have this year Erlang, next year Go, Elixir, Hype, whatever language. That's bad. Incremental design is good. Some design is even better. And legacy is just a synonym of complex. Projects do not become legacy because they're old. They become legacy because they were poorly engineered and they go to the point of 4. Complexity sucks. I want out. That's bad. Microservices are not a silver bullet. You used to have one problem. You're going to have many problems, plus one more. How do you integrate all of those services together, which is a tough nut to crack, let's put it like this. And you have to learn how to deal effectively with legacy code. I'll just mention 2 of my favorite books on the subject because we're out of time. I still love reading books, and probably I should revisit my old talk. So to wrap it up, what is the best way to learn that fire burns? Somebody can tell you that fire is going to burn you, but you're probably going to be skeptical. You want to get burned to check it. You have to get burned. That's how life works. There is no substitute for experience. I told you a bunch of things, but you're going to ignore all of them after my talk. And that's a given. But still, I think that once you get burned, you're maybe going to remember about some of the things I mentioned today, and you're going to come back to this talk with a different understanding, and you're going to get something useful out of it. That's all from me. It was a pleasure. Enjoy the rest of the conference.